Welcome to Lincoln International Business School Open Day. Really, this is quite fun to do online. Actually, it's the only chance I really get to see everybody in one place at the moment because of COVID restrictions. So it's super and a great opportunity. My name's Deborah Lock. I'm Professor of Inclusive Education, and I'm also the Deputy Head of the Business School. So quite an interesting job and huge fun, as you can imagine. With me today, I've got the head of the Department of Accountancy, Finance and Economics and the head of management. The head of marketing and tourism is in another area at the moment and may join us later on, but we can answer questions about that. I've also got students with me, which is really super exciting because the reality is you want to hear from them far more than you actually want to hear from the likes of me, without doubt. So on the top, or on my top, I have Ben with me, and Ben is currently doing advertising and marketing. So Ben, you'll have to correct me when I get it wrong. Absolutely. Then we've got Daniel, who's doing economics. Daniel, yes, you're there? Yeah, okay. And then we've got Nathan, who's doing, let me think what Nathan's doing. He's doing accountancy and finance. Where are you, Nathan? There you are, yeah. Nathan, yes. Michael, who's doing business and management. Yeah. And Hannah, who's doing an MSc in marketing. Is that right? Have I actually identified absolutely everybody? I think I have. Wonderful. So thank you so much, students, for joining us. I think a critical thing around Open Days is for prospective students to hear from existing students, what is it really, really like to be at Lincoln? But also part of this is to hear from the people who've been designing programs and running programs in specialist areas about their approach and how they've aligned their sort of the content of their programs and the focus of their programs to both employer needs and student needs, and really future-proofing students and graduate skills. So when they leave university, they have a really sort of good perspectives to go to. So I'm actually going to start with Siobhan, because the thing about COVID, it's been a really interesting situation that we're all in because it's had such an economic impact. It's had such a real influence on how we deal with money and how, you know, the whole sort of underpinning of the economy is being run. So my question to you is around how you've really sort of managed to retain the relevance of what's going on in the real world of finance, accounting and economics, and how you brought that into your programs. How are your staff managing this really quite complex situation at the moment?
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, accountancy at any time in the business world is really key, because whether businesses are thriving or whether they are in danger of liquidating, you always need accountants, you always need advisors. Our banking and finance program is essential in that sense because you understand how the markets work and the relevant influences from the economic factors, and you also have the finance element of that. So accounting, finance and economics, we cover the full spectrum that hopefully will be able to deal with any of those financial situations. Particularly if we start with the accounting world, you have our programs which are biased towards the professional body exams. And we also have an accounting program new this year called International Accounting, which has no exemptions. So we're targeting both ends of the market. The economist, as always, have lots to say about what's happening in the real world. And our researchers who have PhDs and are interested in the economy, they have their own research focus, which they will bring into teaching. And of course, that will reflect what's happening in the economy at the moment. Maybe, Daniel, you would like to say a little bit more about the economics element and how it reflects the real world?
I'm sorry, I don't know. What do you want me to explain? Sorry.
Sorry, Daniel, I was hoping that you would tell me that David Gray, who has taught you in the past, has taught you everything there is to know about economics, but actually something that we use in economics are packages which reflect the needs of the business industry. We have packages like data stream, Stata, SPSS. We had an extra activity at the end of the year for our economics students, where one of the lecturers did an additional session with them on R. Now, please don't ask me about R. I don't know actually the technical details, but I do know that it's very useful as a tool for when the students go out into the real world. I think Jen, the lecturer, is going to run it again next year. So Daniel, you might have the opportunity to pick up on that next year.
I suppose my question, Daniel, is what's really nice about, what's exciting about doing economics? Because I don't do economics, so I'm really curious as to why anyone would actually choose it. So what is it about economics that really floats your boat?
I think a big thing for me is that you'll see being able to understand these like news articles you'll see talking about whether it's house prices, inflation, the economy, and like before I learned economics, it was all kind of mumbo jumbo. I don't know what any of this means. But like now that I've studied it, I kind of can think, oh yeah, this means that because of this. This is a theory of why this works. Kind of just understanding the kind of financial world is fun. That's probably my favorite part of it.
And do you find that you're developing really skills where you have your own opinions now, and you can sit with friends and say, no, I don't agree. I think it's this. Are you much more sort of able to fight your own corner?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Knowing some of the economics lectures, I imagine they're quite feisty sessions sometimes.
They can be, depending on which lecturer it is. They often they often show their opinions.
Well, and that's perfect, because actually when you leave university, your work will be with people with very strong opinions generally. So you have to be able to sort of fight your own corner and put your own case forward. I'm not sure it's quite the same with accountancy and finance, which is really a much more sort of technical sort of skill, is it? I'm not sure. Sort of what do you think, Nathan? Do you think, what sort of skills are you learning from accountancy?
I think the main thing that we learn from accountancy is making sure we have the attention to detail, as that's like one of the big things that we need to focus on, because the main job of an accountant is the people tend to go into auditing, and as an auditor you need to make sure you can look at a number and make sure that is the correct number, it is true and fair, and then you have to look at and bear in mind that businesses, especially the big ones, have thousands if not millions of transactions throughout the year, and so what they teach us is attention to detail, take your time and make sure that you don't go wrong, because a mistake could cost you your job, or you might lead to like the company itself getting bad publicity and stuff like that.
I think one of the things I've noticed since working in the business school is because it has a prime objective about responsible management, responsible leadership. I think within all areas of finance, accounting, in fact, all areas in business, there's a strong ethics that underpins the programs. And I think, Joanna, when we look at particularly in management, which is such a wide subject, I was just wondering how your programs are developed, but how you're actually embedding that ethos of good behavior, social responsibility, and so that the students that go out and leave have this really strong moral compass about what's good and what's bad and the right way to work. Because I know in finance and accountancy, we have very strong risk management structures. So what are you doing in your area?
We're doing lots, Debbie. And as you quite rightly say, management is a huge, broad spectrum of programs. So at undergraduate level, you can do something more generalist in business and management or business studies, or you can do something far more specialist in business psychology. And there's a whole range. Do check out the recording that goes into more detail on those if you're interested in the particular programs we run. But each one of those programs and the modules within those programs that you study have this principle of responsibility all the way through them, and it covers the range from responsible supply chains. How do we manage supply chains globally, mindful of climate crisis and the importance of being very careful in protecting our planet? That's pretty crucial if we're all going to be here in the next few decades and centuries, but also how we manage people, how we manage global workforces, how we manage our individual interactions with individual employees, how we employ people, how we put people to work. So there's a whole area around there. And of course, in the area of management, which is where what my department covers, the role and the responsibilities of a manager and of a leader in a business is so critical. And you could be managing a team of 2, you could be managing a team of 20,000, and you've still got a huge amount of responsibility as a leader to lead in those right directions and to engage with other human beings in a way that is respectful and appropriate. And that is what we cover in our program. So you're looking at processes, at operations, but you're also looking at those human relations and interactions.
That's, I mean, fascinating. I've got a bit of feedback here. I think that's really interesting because I'm currently looking at the darker side of management and leadership. So yeah. Coming out of your degree, when you actually have this balance about what's good, what's not as good as it could be, I think is a really important thing. So I think Michael, you're currently doing the business and management degree, I believe. What's your view? How's that? How are you learning? What are you finding about what you're learning? So I suppose how useful is it?
You reference like management and yeah, I'd say it's like extremely useful in terms of the degree itself for me for like the real world. What I can mention as well, the placement year is also incredibly informative. As not only do you get that kind of theoretical standpoint on what it is to work and go out in the real world and, you know, experience what it's like to not only to be managed, but also to manage your own work. Yeah. But yeah, aside from that theoretical standpoint, the addition of a placement year, I think, is also quite important as well. As in, but yeah, what I was going to say is that what is it? Basically, throughout my placement year, I effectively cut that in half into 2 separate kind of placement years almost. Right, I worked for 2 different companies almost, and I think that that linked quite well with my business and management degree. As from a theoretical standpoint, I can apply the degree to the 2 different experiences almost.
That's really interesting. So what sort of companies were they? What was, you know, were they different sectors? What were they?
So initially when I under placement year, I started off in the recruitment industry. I was mostly working at a marketing communications role for them, in which I found that the management style kind of came with working within the recruitment industry, as it's not exactly you're paid more on a commission basis usually in that type of work, in which I found as well people have to work a lot more independently, and it's at least from my perspective, from where I was working as a placement student, those who were actually managing me, they had to be a little bit more concerned with themselves rather than passing on the necessary knowledge or the necessary knowledge to become a good recruiter. Which is why I left the company and pursued a different marketing communications role somewhere else within the lubricants industry, of which I found that to be a much kind of like better experience. The management styles that they approached me with is something that I found that I benefited better from it, basically, from moving companies.
And I think this is where going to university and actually getting a degree really helps, when you start learning a particular subject and seeing how it can be applied across multiple sectors. And I think this is something that we sometimes don't really talk much about. So I do know that the events industry is really suffering at the moment because of COVID and restrictions. But the skills and the competencies and the behaviours that you learn in events management can be applied to virtually any sector, actually, in terms of project management, deliverables, being responsible for your own work, turning up on time, teamwork, etc., etc. And it sounds like that your business and management degree is actually being strengthened. What you're learning theoretically, you've actually now seen in practice, and that can inform your own practice going forward, which I think is a really good way to keep your employability prospects really robust as we go through some really quite challenging times, I think, in the future. I mean, looking at what's going on at the moment, and I do, having looked after marketing and tourism in the past, I have a bit of a soft spot for this world. And Hannah, and I think I've got Hannah, and I've also got Ben from this particular department. And I wonder what will happen as advertising and marketing has to change and fit around a virtual world, and how your current studies may be helping you with that huge leap between a different sort of marketing and a different sort of advertising. Either of you, I'm really just interested if you what's your view about what you're learning and how it will help you in the future. So which one wants to go first? Ben, you go first.
Yeah,
you go first.
Yeah, I think it'll become more digital. So social media, YouTube adverts, banners on web pages will become so much more in demand, and the cost will probably rise for the most viewed places. I think in-store, maybe even television advertising. I know I don't watch that much live TV, but whereas a YouTube video, I think an advert will connect with me more. So I think it'll start to move more online, because that's where the audience will be. And if like companies like Amazon and even supermarkets where you can get home delivery, if someone's going to see a deal at a supermarket online, but then there's no point having it at the supermarket because no one's going to go there. So I think it's going to be much more digital, and people are going to be competing for the space where people will be able to see their advertising.
Interesting. What about you, Hannah? Because I think you're doing a postgrad, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm doing MSc marketing. Yeah, I agree with what Ben said, and actually now I'm writing my dissertation, which is going to be due next month. But a lot of it is actually related to the pandemic and how that kind of affected marketing industry. And I've taken a particular stance in my dissertation, so I'm looking at social marketing and how pandemic kind of hit that. And actually, through my interviews, what I found is actually the good and the bad kind of effects of the pandemic. So because there's a lot of talks that people might become more sustainable and kind of they had that time to think about their kind of values and what they had kind of that time that they had to think about all those things. But there's also there's a chance maybe for unsustainable behavior. But definitely a lot of people, a lot of businesses are, even those ones that haven't been online, they're already kind of starting to think about, well, they're ready to survive. They have to kind of go online to get the customers from there. So it's, yeah, for me in marketing, it was just very interesting about the communications and how to represent the business in the way that would be best for them. And for the consumers. So that's my perspective.
I think marketing and is a really fascinating area because things are changing rapidly, and you have to have, regardless of whichever subject you do, digital literacy now is sort of something every single graduate needs to develop, which sort of makes me think about how we're currently delivering. So even before COVID, the business school had a number of work-based distance learning programs for mature students and for those students who are in employment. So we had a background in sort of delivering remote learning. So with the current COVID sort of initiative or crisis, whatever you want to call it today, I'm curious to know how our students, how you are feeling and about the sort of blended learning approach. What's your experience been like? Because I think this is what prospective students will want to know. What is it like at the end of an online session? What is it like in a blended session? So I'm really curious, because some of the things that we have really spent a lot of time on, which is around group work and teamwork, because we know when you leave university, the chances are you go to a job and there's more than just you. So now you're learning virtual team work and virtual sort of group work. So, how are your experiences? So I think, who's not spoken for a while? Nathan, I'm interested to see what's your view? What's it been like? Because am I right in thinking you're part of the management student investment fund as well?
Yeah, Ellsmith, yeah.
Yeah. So how are you pulling that team together if you're not physically together?
So I think one of the main things that we use is we use like a third-party app that we use to talk to each other, and that we're able to communicate. And so next year everything will be online because there's no point risking it for the COVID. So we're just going to have our meetings online, where it's similar to this. It's like we can be able to see each other, and if they need to tell us something, it will all be on there. So it's a bit like WhatsApp, but just more about what us that in the Ellsmith community is used to doing, and so that's what we're using for next year. And when it comes,
carry on, yeah.
When it comes to like the lectures and stuff like that, it's pretty simple. The online, they give us a link maybe a week before, even, or a couple of days before, then we just click on it and then we just listen to the lecture. And if they ask questions, you can type it in, or you can just unmute your mic and then just talk to them normally. So it's actually very simple and easy to get used to.
So remind me, the investment fund is it sort of it's a trading service? It's a trading company, isn't it? That you're investing. Students are investing in trading. Is that right?
Yes. So Ellsmith is about. So we have a lump of money, and then we invest it into stocks that we think are worthwhile, whether this is because they will increase in stock price and then we will sell it, so we get capital gains, or we will invest in something and it will slowly grow over time, and what we want is the dividends that are going to come out of it. So that's what Ellsmith is about. But that's like the end result of what we do, but the main part is the writing the reports, researching the companies, making sure that we find the right one that fits our profile of what we want to look for.
And are those reports part of your assessments, or can they be used for your assessments as well?
Assessments, do you mean like for modules?
Yes, for modules. Are you able to?
No, we don't use them we don't get assessed by them. But what happens is when we write the reports, we give it to the people at the top of it, and they will read them. They will then say if we should or shouldn't, and then we will then have to present it to a board or something. I can't exactly remember. I think Siobhan's on it as well, because Siobhan was meant to be there for one of them, but due to COVID, we wasn't able to do it.
So that sounds like a really good. I mean, what have you learned from participating in this? Because this sounds like learning the art of trading. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially. So it's very linked to my module, because it's not linked to the accountancy side, but it's more linked to the finance side. So the finance management, what we get taught in that in second and third year, is directly linked to what we use in Ellsmith. And even if you don't know what we're talking about, there's like training sessions that Ellsmith puts on, so everyone's like on the same level. And then there's obviously going to be people higher that do a lot more research, and they also help out with the training and stuff like that.
That's really useful, isn't it? So, I mean, it sounds to me that the skills you're learning there are really going to set you up for when you graduate and you go on to the next stage of your career, without doubt. I was just wondering, how are the marketing guys managing with the online world and the online experience of teaching and learning? Because actually, the rise in digital marketing is enormous now. I mean, it seems to me that if there's one subject that naturally fits with an online world, it's got to be digital marketing and advertising. What's your views? Anna?
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
How are you finding the online experience for marketing?
Online experience of learning? Or yeah, I think it became much more easier, I would say. And in terms of like, if we're talking about learning with Lincoln and how is that what you meant, like learning with lecturers?
Yeah. How are you finding the lectures online?
Yeah, I think it's become much easier, and I think a lot. Like, I was like really surprised by how quickly lecturers have adopted, and actually they did really like kind of successfully. So we had online presentations, because usually you would do it physically, but we couldn't do it that way. So and it was done in a very kind of like very efficient way for both students and like lecturers, because we had an opportunity to practice online and to present like in our allocated time slots, so everything was run very smoothly, and it was just easier for us, I would say.
That's good. That's good to hear. Actually, it's very good for us to hear this as well as head of the department. So, what's your view then? What's it been like for you, Ben? Sort of online teaching.
Well, I had one hour a week last year where it was online, but from that it felt a lot easier than just having to go to the lecture, and that instead of having to go there, waste some time, then go into the lecture, then leave 10 minutes early, instead you just went in straight away and you had more time to properly learn. But I think this year it will become more natural, and obviously because it is now the new norm, whereas I only had 1 hour last year, I think it will just make it flow easier, and you can go in, do the lecture, and then you're done, rather than having to walk to campus, go in. But I think having that aspect and having more time and the time being more useful as well, I think that'll be a lot bigger this year.
I think so. I mean, one of the things I quite like about online learning is that I can watch it, go to the lecture, and then because they're filmed, if you're a reflector, and I'm a bit of a reflector, I can go back a few days later and go, okay, now let me just think about this for a moment. So it gives me a time to go back and reflect and maybe absorb it a little bit better than I would have done probably if I just sat in a straight lecture and then left the room. I suspect that's my feeling for me. So then what about for the management side of things? How are you finding that, sort of being online and your online experience? Michael.
Oh, sorry, my mic was muted. When it comes to the aspect of like attending online lectures and everything like that, as everybody's been saying, it's more or less about the how you utilize your time and everything like that. And I think attending online lectures actually is extremely useful in terms of like using your time more effectively, as instead of moving from building to building, attending different lectures with in person. I think kind of like staying in the same spot. So like I'll be viewing all the lectures from my computer, but I'll also be able to necessarily I wouldn't exactly lose that kind of train of thought going between different lectures. I can kind of keep within that same attitude of like I'm here and I'm ready to work, because I'm stuck within that centralized location working almost constantly, so I'll never like lose focus or anything like that as well. So I think the aspect of attending online lectures effectively teaches me to almost better manage my time as well, because there's no room for distraction.
That sounds really good. I mean, this year I think we have got a few face-to-face, but it's really controlled. And I've just come back from Lincoln, so I've been there for about a week, 2 weeks, just to have a look around the campus and see how it's set up. And I feel really comfortable that the social distancing that's being used within the buildings is really safe. And I actually feel quite safe around Lincoln. I'm wandering around. And so I know that some of you are now back in your private accommodation in Lincoln. And I was just wondering how you're feeling about sort of how safe do you feel in the city? Because we will have students who are thinking about traveling, coming to Lincoln, and they'll want to know, what is it like at the moment? So who's in Lincoln? You're in Lincoln, aren't you, at the moment, Ben? Yeah, Michael?
Yes, yeah, I am in Lincoln. I've been, I actually moved to Lincoln quite early. I moved in early August. And so I've been here for a couple months now, and I never had any issues with regards to things like safety. And I didn't feel restricted in any way. I felt perfectly safe as long as I wore a mask. I was perfectly fine. And obviously, when it comes to like sanitizing your hands and things like that, I wouldn't exactly see it as a hindrance. I didn't think that my experience being in Lincoln was hindered in any way. I didn't feel scared or anything like that. I always felt quite safe moving about. You got to trust in everybody else's common sense as well to also wear a mask and everything like that. So I felt perfectly safe going around Lincoln. Otherwise I wouldn't have stayed here as long as I have or moved up as early as I did. So yeah, I felt very safe.
I think someone else is back. Is which one? Is it Daniel? Are you back?
Yeah, it's me. I'm back.
You're back, Nathan. And how's that been for you?
Yeah, I think being in Lincoln is perfectly safe for me. Like in particular, Lincoln's like quite out of the way of like most other areas as it is, and so the cases in Lincoln isn't as high as it would be if it was in a bigger city. And so I don't feel scared to go outside. As long as I've got my mask and I've got my hand sanitizer, I'm perfectly fine being in Lincoln and walking around.
That's good. I mean, I live in London, so I'd commute to Lincoln. And so I was pleasantly surprised when I was there over the last couple of weeks, how organised it was and how responsible people were actually. And I, like you, had no fears or qualms about going out, going to shops. Everything was incredibly well organised. And coming onto the campus the first time for 6 months, I think, it was actually really comforting to know that so much time has been spent to set up rooms and set up teaching spaces in such a safe environment that I always thought it was a super thing, actually. I'm really keen to go back now in October when I return. Something, isn't it? Indeed. So we thought a little bit about sort of the online world. I'm curious, though. So the thing about COVID and all the travel restrictions, and actually, with the move towards Industry 4.0 and the beginnings of virtual working across the globe, have you been doing lots of group work online, is my question to the students. And has that been easy? So who can we pick on now? Who's been doing? Daniel, have you done any group work online?
No, I actually haven't yet. I haven't had the need
yet to come. Yeah. And what about who has? Michael, have you done group work online yet?
Not as of yet with regards to doing work for the university. However, during my placement year, obviously during the start of COVID and lockdown and everything like that, I was, required to work from home for a while. So that involved a lot of group work online, kind of almost like interchanging between different chat rooms to discuss like different tasks for the day. So yeah, I've been involved in a lot of group work online, and what I can honestly say is like the aspect of working online and not exactly getting that face-to-face interaction, it's not exactly a hindrance. As long in any case, it might actually allow you to speak a bit more freely, speaking from behind a computer and everything like that. Yeah, it doesn't really interfere with group work at all or anything like that.
That's
as long as
really
you remain like
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
sorry.
it's the way of the working world now. Actually, I think it's sort of
It is.
we've all realised we don't have to be in the office, but actually we can still work and collaborate together, even if we're in different countries, because we, you know, and I think that's a huge lesson for us. I think I suspect what we miss is the social interaction, actually physically, occasionally seeing somebody face to face. But I think we will, you know, that will, over the next 6 to 8 months, that will sort of, we'll have slightly more of that than we currently do at the moment. So Ben, have you done any group work yet?
In my first year I did. I think one of the first things they tell you to do is like make a group, and so you can talk freely and whenever, obviously, about the work. I think maybe last year it felt a bit awkward, but this year it'll be so normal because that's just what you have to do, and people will be so used to it at that point. And from the whole of lockdown, that's what they've had to do, you know, Zoom calls and FaceTimes to get stuff done. So I think it'll become the new normal, and people will be so much more used to it and easier to communicate online as well.
Oh, I think it's really useful. So I have to ask the heads, Joanna and Siobhan, how do you think your academics are keeping students interested, and that they're not sort of vacanting out halfway through an online session? What are they doing to sort of really keep the learning interesting, keep the student really engaged?
We've done a lot, Debbie. Academics, when we first went into lockdown, of course, back in March, it was a sudden crisis, and we flipped within 24 hours to moving everything online. In preparation for this coming academic year, and I appreciate people might be listening in and watching who are looking for 2021, so of course, hopefully things will have changed again. We've become far more adaptable, and we've actually used the phrase adapt, and it stands for something, but don't test me on what it stands for. But it's the principle of having that flexibility and adaptability, and also to be much more planned in giving a varied learning experience. There's no reason, as this platform demonstrates, that you can deliver a lecture, but you can also deliver questions and answers, just as you've been doing, Debbie, and picking on people by name. There's no reason why a lecturer can't do that as well. No, it's a perfectly appropriate way that somebody might chair a meeting. And indeed, students could do the very same. You've just been talking about doing teamwork, and if we set virtual teams in a platform like this, there's no reason why one student couldn't lead a team and chair a meeting. And we're all learning new protocols about what to do and what not to do. And it's interesting, if I might just pick up, I know we've had a query from Josh about business psychology, and the psychological differences about how we now work in this blended approach has been something that academics have really had to take on board. They've had to adjust their own psychology in terms of student interactions. When I've done recorded sessions, which you can have a look at, Josh, online, and anyone else can, they're being streamed today, I've hated the fact that I've been talking into a silent void in a house, you know, with a camera. And I actually would much rather talk to 500 people in a live setting in a lecture theatre, because I get people laughing or not laughing or grimacing or yawning, and then I know to adjust my approach accordingly. So that's one of the things we've had to adapt. And Josh, really happy to pick up some of your more detailed queries. And Siobhan Ray, different Siobhan, who's the programme leader, is on the Unibuddy chat, and we'll talk to you in more detail. But the whole area around business psychology, I think, is a big area that many of us have become more attuned to. And a business psychology degree will give you a deep understanding of psychology, but I have to caution, it's not a psychology degree. The university do offer pure psychology degrees as well, so check those out if you're interested. But your question's interesting, because you're asking, do you want to specialise in an area of business or do something more generic? And I think that's something that's really important for you to reflect on. So business psychology will give you a really thorough grounding taught by experts in psychology. And there can be slightly different approaches. So being adaptable to your learning will be quite critical if you choose something like business psychology, just as lecturers and academics have had to be adaptable in the way that they are preparing classes and delivering. The more generic business degrees will give you a broader breadth of subjects, so you'll have more opportunities to study different subjects. And you might just touch on a little bit of psychology, but it wouldn't be anywhere near in the same depth. But then again, business psychology won't be in the same depth of psychology as a psychology degree will. So the university offers a huge spectrum, and that flexibility and the adaptability in our programs, I think, is a sort of replicates the flexibility and adaptability we're having to put into our individual teaching sessions. So I hope I've managed to answer 2 questions in one there, one for Josh and one for you, Debbie. You're on mute.
There we go. That's usually a £10 fine or something, isn't it? So I mean, Siobhan, what about you? Because accountancy and finance and economics could actually be considered, I hate to say this, a little dry for some people.
That depends on where you're sitting, Debbie.
So how are you, really giving, encouraging and engaging students? How are your lecturers doing this?
Yeah, well, teaching online is, of course, something new to all of us, but actually something that a lot of our staff were doing before the pandemic was actually recording their lectures anyway, because we know that in accountancy, finance and economics, we have a lot of international students, and we were finding that the international students really benefited from the lectures being recorded, so they could go back, slow it down, watch it at their own pace. So some people were used to it already, and I know that the staff and the teaching and learning director are working very, very closely to help staff develop techniques to engage the students, so that it's not just a monologue for 50 minutes, but that it will be broken down more gently, so that the students can react from time to time within the seminar or the lecture. So it's not just a monologue.
I think it's good.
It is good. And something that Nathan referred to earlier was the fact that already the Lincoln Student Managed Investment Fund is using the media or ICT to communicate. And because that, maybe this might be a chance for me to just say what the Lincoln Student Managed Investment Fund actually is. It's a real fund based on real money, and this is invested by the students. They get advice and guidance, but they do it themselves. They have to adhere to stock exchange rules. So it is an independent real money fund where the student can get real world experience without having to take a year out of the classroom. So one of our ex-students who was in the fund for 3 years went off to work in an investment bank in Vietnam. And the experience that he had with the investment fund was recognized by the Vietnamese government as worthy of the 3 years required experience that he needed to get his visa.
Oh, wow,
So,
that's incredible.
That was
That
excellent.
really that's excellent. That really is excellent. So I think our time is nearly drawing through according to, I've had a little bit of a 3-minute warning. But before we do, I'm actually going to do what I did in my last session is I'm going to make every one of you have a think about things. So I would like to know from every single person, one by one, what is it that you really like about Lincoln and about the business school? What is it you really, really like? And possibly one area that you might want to see improvements, but maybe something you'd like slightly differently. So let's start with Siobhan. Why do you like working in the business school?
I love the business school, Debbie. I've been here for almost 17 years, and I moved from Surrey. And it's just such a friendly, warm environment. The business school in particular, I found, I came from FE, and I found that the friendliness of the people I was working with was in sharp contrast in places to what I'd been used to. You always have someone to ask, whether you're a student or whether you're actually a colleague. And one of the particular things I like is that some students that we have taught have come back and are actually lecturers now on my accountancy, finance and economics team. And that to me says everything.
I think so. I think so. Joanna, your turn. Why do you like?
Okay, so my experience is slightly different to Siobhan's. I've been here just over a year, and so have moved to Lincoln. But actually, I've moved back to Lincoln because I was born here. So I'm very biased about Lincoln and think it's an amazing city. And I've just moved into the city from living out in a small village, and I can hear the bells of the cathedral from my window. Can't quite see the cathedral, but I can definitely hear them, and that's really exciting. And when I came for my interview here, I walked from the car park along the Brayford, which is a big waterfront in Lincoln, past swans. And in the big city that I worked in before, I just couldn't do that. And so the aesthetics, the setting is amazing. It's great to be back in my birth city. Of course, I'm biased. And yet the business school is as exciting, if not more exciting, in terms of its outlook, its entrepreneurial focus. It seizes opportunities, it's creative, it's innovative, it's responsive, it's world leading in so many ways, and all of that makes me very excited to be here.
That sounds fantastic. You're doing marketing. Nathan, your turn. What do you really like about it?
So I think if we're on about Lincoln as a whole, I think one of the perks of being here is how small the city is itself. One of the things I came here is because I didn't want to travel a lot. And as I was born in the town and not a city, I wanted to start off small because I didn't want to go to somewhere that would be overwhelming. And Lincoln is exactly that. It's like a very student-friendly city. Majority of Lincoln is quite student-based. But as for the university, I think going back to what Siobhan said about everyone being friendly, when since I've been here, like I know all my accounting lecturers and they're all friendly, they're all nice. I can have a conversation with them, like just not about like the accounting in general, just a general talk. And yeah, it's great being here. Everyone's so friendly.
That's good to hear. Hannah, your turn. What is it you like about Lincoln and about the business school?
So I've been in Lincoln for 4 years because I studied undergrad in graphic design in Lincoln as well, and I decided to stay on because I just love the city so much. It's a very lovely and historic city. I like the business school because of it's like community, kind of a feel of community, and also because it's given me like amazing opportunities to actually meet with like some people kind of came from different countries, and I think business school is very like kind of popular because of the international community that there is there. So I think I definitely like business school because of that. I think some of the things that I would want to kind of like see as an improvement is probably bringing more opportunities for kind of placements, kind of going more into industry and kind of all that sort of stuff basically. But overall, I really like it.
And I think that's something that we're doing. We're working really hard on expanding the placements, but also diversifying the placements as well. So what Michael's done is actually ideal in many respects. 2 short ones where you get different perspectives. We really like that. So that sounds wonderful. So Michael, let's talk to you. What do you like about Lincoln? What do you like about the business school?
So what I love about Lincoln as a city is I guess it's like Nathan said, actually it's quite a compact city. You don't have to necessarily travel too much. It'll give you the space that you require to grow and always like and venture out and see new things. But you know, it also has that kind of friendly familiarity to it as well, which is like quite attractive for a city, because like you don't want to feel lost and you don't want to feel intimidated either. And when it comes to the business school as well, I'd say it's like a mixture of points. When it comes to like what I like about it, is it as Joanna said, with a very sort of well-placed kind of marketing speech about it. It was it's like a fantastic combination of different things, world leading in a lot of different ways. And Joanna as well mentioned like a lot of quite interesting points that kind of factored in to make it quite world leading. And I think with these different points as well, like such as innovative and creative and different things like that, what's also great about the Lincoln Business School is the opportunity for you to be flexible, to delve into different things as and when you actually want to, and gain a wide range of different experiences in combination with a really supportive and fantastic community, which will actually allow you to do these things, which I can also say is not only within the business school itself being present within Lincoln, but like with my placement year, I was out in London in Farringdon working for a recruitment firm and had the support available to move to Kent and start working in the lubricants industry. You know, it's something that allows you to get a wide range of experiences, and you know, the Lincoln Business School will, you know, really help you to benefit from that, really.
Fantastic. Ben, your turn.
I think the reason I came to Lincoln was similar to how Nathan was saying about coming from a small town. It isn't the biggest city, but I didn't want to feel lost or like I was going somewhere where it was completely brand new and felt so different. So I think having the cathedral, the high street and the Brentford pool, that was a big attraction for me, and to also like escape university life as well, and just have the space to just be around and explore as well. I think that's good. But for the business school itself, I think the staff, the lecturers are knowing that they have the industry knowledge and experience is such a big thing. So I know like a few of my lecturers, you know, they've written books and they've worked in the industry, and you know that, and you can tell by their passion for the subjects they're teaching, and it makes it come across much more authentic, and they obviously clearly know what they're on about, and makes you want to listen more, because it's not just from textbook. This is when they give examples from what they've done or what's happening in the industry or the news, like they know and they are passionate about their subject that much that they're still trying to learn more about it as you're trying to learn from them. So I think that's a great way of keeps you motivated and keeps you wanting to know more.
Fantastic, thank you. And Daniel, I think you're the last one, aren't you? So what do you like about Lincoln, and what do you like about the business school?
I know it's been said before, but the size of Lincoln is, I think, is a big thing. Like, everything's so close together. It's like it's never a long walk to get anywhere. And also, kind of similar to Ben, I didn't want to go to a big, massive city because I think I would have been overwhelmed. And so Lincoln's like a good size for that. And then in terms of the business school, I think the big thing for me is that I genuinely get along with all my lecturers. Like, I think it's very easy to ask them questions at the end of the lecture and things. Like, if ever I've like not understood something, they'll take me through it. Like, it happened a lot first year for me. There was a module I found tricky, but I kept on asking my seminar tutor, and he kept on helping me with it. So I think that's probably the big thing for me.
Fantastic. So I think it's my turn now, isn't it? So I've been in Lincoln 6 years, and I actually did come from a very large city. I've been in London for a substantive time of my career, and I really like the fact I can walk everywhere. I don't have to drive, and at night, if I'm walking home from work, I feel safe. I really, really like that feeling. In terms of the business school, I was attracted to it because it's ambitious, but it's actually ambitious for its students. And I really like that, you know, the whole of the education is around what do students need? How can we help them get to the next stage? Staff are collegial. I do think it's more of a family orientated world. It is very much because it's the size it is very close. So we all sort of know each other, and we all know about different students. So I think that sense of community, that sense of one community, one family is really, really strong. But also that real ambition for our students to succeed is absolutely critical. And that's what I find deeply, deeply attractive. And of course, they have a really nice coffee bar in the David Chiddick building. So that also sways me somewhat as well. So guys, I think we've overshot our time, and I would really like to say thank you very much for taking your time out of a very busy Saturdays. It's been really lovely to hear your wonderful nice, kind words, but also your experience of online, because I think there's a lot of concern outside universities. What's it feel like? So that's wonderful to hear that, you know, we're sort of holding our own and we're actually doing quite interesting things. And I wish you all well, and thank you everybody for sort of listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Debbie.
Thank you.
Bye all.